Okay, let's start. Today I'm going to show you YouTube regarding what is this? Oh, the rise of the oligarchy. Oligarchy. This is talking about United States of America. And 2 weeks ago, we discussed just for the manufacturing company, and also what the name of the Blackwater, and one more company. Today, I'm going to show you the oligarch company for finance. In the middle of this presentation video, okay, let's start. This is very difficult. I'm going to explain each paragraph of the contents. Oh, here. Okay. 困ったな、ここに言って困るな、この人。Okay.
In headquarters right over here. You have a lot of the top law firms that represent them. I mean, this is where the 1% of 1%, and it's symbolic, right?
The banks shook off the shackles of regulation. Their entrepreneurial spirits were unleashed.
Let's try to make some money!
It was high times. It was a thrill. Maybe not if you simply had some sort of a regular job, but if you could speculate. Suddenly, it was all unraveling, falling apart, crushing down. It was a terrifying time.
Now it has snowballed into what may be the biggest financial crisis since the Great Depression.
Breaking news here. Stocks all around the world are tanking.
We're in the last days of this country surviving.
Would someone do something?
Who are making this? I mean, at the time, who was it? Paulson, right? People from J.P. Morgan, people from Citi.
Paulson was Goldman Sachs, wasn't he?
At the time, yeah, but he was a part of the government, part of the treasury. The first step to recovery.
This is 2008, Black Monday. And this is Bush is he's going to decide bail out for the large companies, banking companies.
Recovery is to safeguard the financial system. I've talked at length to the Secretary about his recommendation.
Many people misunderstand. Obama did. No. This is Bush did.
On the decisions made to safeguard Citicorp.
It was a shocking proposal. There had never been anything like it. A $700 billion.
Okay, 700 billion to 11.3 trillion.
Bailout.
Given the situation we're facing, not
He said 700 billion.
passing a bill now would cost these Americans much more later.
It was to save America, to save the world. That's what we were told. Is that what happened? We went from Wall Street to Washington to speak with David Rothkopf, author.
Okay, this is they're going to start discussion. Did you see it?
Yeah.
Did you see it? Okay, let's try to repeat again. She speaks English too first, and she using a lot of names, and very difficult to recognize, and very difficult. What is her message? Okay, just try to. I'm going to review again. Okay.
Of superclass, the global power elite, and the world they are making. And Naomi Prince, author of All the President's
She is Naomi Prince.
Bankers, the hidden alliances that drive American power. She used to be with Goldman Sachs, the same place that Henry Paulson came from, and that's not how she sold it to.
What happens is, Goldman wants its money back because AIG is protecting its its investments, right? And AIG doesn't have money to do it. And Goldman's like, give me money back because whatever it is you're doing isn't going to work. We want our money back.
She talking about money back is rotation money, invest and get return, invest return.
And the system starts to implode. And then Hank Paulson gets a call from Lloyd Blankfein, and he's like, we've got some serious, multi-billion-dollar exposures here. Do something.
Right.
And then Hank Paulson gets on his knees.
So he is multi-billion dollars, just investment, actually, exposure.
I'm summarizing before, Pelosi, et cetera, and it says, we need a congressional bailout.
The purpose of the steps I've outlined tonight is to safeguard the financial security of American workers and families and small businesses.
The idea that this was done to help people or to save the U.S. economy from the catastrophe, which is the word he's used, was just a lie, really.
Classic case of the Federal Reserve helping big banks get bigger, while at the exact same time, Main Street was doing terribly. Local banks, community banks, family businesses are failing, not able to get loans, community banks failing, small businesses can't get capitalized.
That wasn't the end.
She is talking about just exactly 2008, and actually the lots of get capitalized means lot of
The
problems.
deception and sleight of hand.
We knew that the Fed was engaging in significant unconditional policy. The actual data pertaining to who received the benefits was hidden.
I wrote you a letter and I said, hey,
Oh, this is, as you know, the Bernie Sanders. And she's talking about bailout, criticizing bailout.
who'd you lend the money to?
Okay, he said, hey, would you lend the money to what?
What were the terms of those loans? How can my constituents in Vermont get some of that money? Who makes the decisions? You guys sit around in a room, do you make it? Are there conflicts of interest?
This is Bush invested support bailout $700 billion, so he just criticized him.
So my question to you is, will you tell the American people to whom you lent $2.2 trillion of their dollars?
I think actually they bailed out 2.2 trillion. I'm not sure what he said. And this is, I think, asked Bush to explain American people why.
Will you tell us who got that money and what the terms are of those agreements? Tell us who they are.
Oh, this is a former Fed chairman, right?
No.
This was all, for the most part, hush-hush, although it was going on under our noses, because you could see the numbers, just not where they're at. And eventually it got to the point where I believe Bloomberg and Fox News had to sue the Federal Reserve to release this information.
They're the numbers the Federal Reserve said were too dangerous. Numbers that for the first time reveal the staggering sums the world's biggest banks borrowed from the Fed to get these numbers. Bloomberg fought the Fed all the way to the Supreme Court.
It's 26,000 pages, right, initially is what it is. So what we decided to do was just to add them all up. Just stop and add them up. And when you add them up, you get up to something $29.616 trillion. It's shocking, justifiably. I mean, U.S. GDP is $16 trillion, right? It's at $29.616 trillion.
You have to be a large, greedy, reckless financial institution to apply for these monies.
There were only two criteria to get in on the action. You had to be in the finance business and you had to be big.
Oh, this happened in 2008. Bush supported trillion money for major banks and saved bank bailout. And since then, almost 8 years passed, and take succeed in by Obama. Obama actually did the same way to support large company and big firm, big banking. So actually, middle class people disappear. That's the reason why Trump won, right?
You didn't even have to be American.
11 trillion approximately went to foreign central banks.
11 trillion went to the foreign central bank.
There's no loyalty. The notion of a U.S. company.
He's talking about no loyalty, means no loyalty for the nation.
Company or a U.S. bank is antiquated, because essentially
most institutions, including small businesses today, go where the business is, wherever it is, any place in the world.
They're foreign banks. It's just, you can't even make this stuff up.
Who profited? So now there's a problem with the phrase that says what's good for the banks is good for the country?
Well, it isn't, because not only, because
Okay, she's going to start to speak. It's very difficult.
right now the productive purpose that banks even used to serve is no more their business line. Their business line is to have this backing from the federal government, which they've amassed particularly over the last few decades by deregulating a lot of rules that kept them from the pool of deposit money, the pool of loans that they use. They use other people's money to speculate with. To go.
So what he's talking about, just get money from the ordinary people, and then try to invest money for speculate. And this is just the subprime loan she's talking about.
Go into these derivative markets to back these
Okay, derivative market is
hedge
subprime.
funds, to expand internationally in places where they have no accountability to those nations
Okay, they have no accountability. Okay,
or to
people.
their American home nation. So that there's no more accountability in the financial system. There's no more personal accountability. There's no demand, like in some cases there were from certain presidents. LBJ, for example,
LBJ is Lyndon Johnson.
he said to bankers, you know what? If you want lower taxes on what you're doing, you got to help me with my great society, my plans to help the individuals in the country. You have to give back. There's no accountability.
The social role played by banks.
So she said she criticized derivative and speculation, and bank has no responsibility for people. But her English is very difficult to understand, right?
Which is to take money from people who have it and lend it to people.
Okay, taking money from people who have it, lend it
Who
to.
need it so that they can build
Okay.
businesses, create jobs, improve society, invest in their homes, invest in their buildings, and so forth, has become increasingly peripheral to the business of banks, which essentially have discovered a way to make a lot of money off of the churn of money circulating through the system,
Churn is circulating.
making it in milliseconds. But you know, there are other examples in the world. You know, Canada.
Okay, he's just talking about, so bank is trying to circulating money to get a lot of money using derivative. And he's going to explain Canada. The Canada is different.
Didn't go through this banking crisis. Canada had a regulated system. Did that mean there were no banks and no hedge funds and no investment of Canada? Of course not.
So Canada is had regulated for hedge fund and investment.
But they had a balance. Sweden went through a crisis
Well, he also said Sweden case.
in the early 90s, looked at the crisis. They have a society that's very much oriented towards social benefits. They responded with the restructuring of their banks that actually ultimately became a model for us after our problem. So it is possible to balance social desires.
Okay, he said balance social desire. And actually, as you know, currently Trump tried to revive hedge fund and derivative, right? So this can turn around.
with having a functioning financial center.
What they've been doing is rather than helping individuals restructure their mortgage,
He said helping the individual restructuring their
or
mortgage.
small business loans or things that they perceive to be risky, they're instead increasing
Okay, then instead,
the amount of leverage or borrowing they're giving to the hedge fund,
okay, hedge fund he's talking about.
who then make all this
Also,
international
just
debt.
as the earning.
So bank is helping people instead of helping people. He tried to make investment money for hedge fund.
Last year, the top 25 hedge funds guys came out, and it was $21.5 billion for 25 guys.
So
So the
the top three, something like $6-7 billion.
right? But the top 25 averaged
Right.
$1 billion.
Okay, see, top 25 average like $1 billion. But he's talking about top 25 bankers. Okay, but annual salary $1 billion, $1 billion, 10億、10億、10億ドル、1000億円。I think this is too much. Not too much. $1 billion in total. Average, right? But usually the highest money is about 60億円. In total, maybe. $1 too much.
in their 2013
So
pay
that
pack.
says what to you, David?
Insanity. I mean, look, there is no economic reason to pay them that much because I suspect they would have worked just as hard, say, for 100 million rather than $1 billion
Oh, this is true. 100 million US. Okay.
for 1 year's compensation. And there's
1 year's compensation,
no
right?
social reason. In fact, it's socially catastrophic.
So he criticized just bankers get too much money, right?
So how is it that they're making that much money?
They're leveraging
Yeah, he make a question how much that money? That's so much money they're making.
cheap money into rising markets.
Cheap
and
money,
by
which is the
cheap money.
government is the one giving out.
Well, it's giving it to them.
Compared to some rates in the market, right? You know, I mean, they were very low rates. And then the Fed goes from being a lender of last resort, helping out private financial institutions, or even assisting in the helping out AIG and Bear Stearns, to actually making markets, right? And then in this case, they're kind of serving as a market maker, allowing for banks to make loans and agreeing that these loans would be bought.
Since then, it seems that, or presumably, when you read the mainstream press, is that now the bankers are under scrutiny, now there are regulations.
They are and they're not. The sizes of their balance sheets are bigger. They have more assets and more deposits. The big six banks have more concentration than they've ever had before. So all that stuff is like smoke around the edges.
Well, also. So what do you
in
think?
this
That too big
entire
is now
cycle.
becoming bigger?
It is
Oh,
bigger. It
Too
is
big is
bigger.
now bigger.
It's absolutely
And
bigger.
there's more too big to fail banks
Absolutely.
today than there were before the crisis.
Well,
doesn't
they
make
made
sense.
So he's just criticizing the current bank. After bailout, they got getting bigger and get more money. And top people get more money. He criticized.
These banks are
Well,
bigger
it
than they were
wouldn't make,
before.
wouldn't make sense if they'd actually tried to fix it,
Right.
but they didn't try to fix it.
And hence,
So it actually does make, well, because size, yeah, look, I went to see Bob Rubin when I was doing,
So he said the banker they didn't change their attitude after crash, economic crash.
I meaning
the former
former-
treasury secretary. And I went to see him, but when I was doing my last book, and I said, you know, have you thought about this whole, you know, too big to fail thing? Did we go too far? And he said, you don't understand. Too big to fail is not an aberration from the system.
It is.
It is the system.
That's true.
I was at an event in Davos, a lunch. Jamie Dimon, like the
Okay, Jamie Dimon is chairman of Goldman Sachs.
day before, been fined $20 billion
Fine is 200億ドル。
for JP Morgan. And he stood up, Davos, the world elite. Massive applause. Good for you, Jamie. You know, you're standing, and he got a raise. He got a raise after getting a $20 billion fine.
OK、200億ドルのファインを課されても、彼が200億ドルレイズ払った。
Because they just think of that as a cost of doing business.
He think of that as a cost of doing business.
They say there is no accountability in the context
So he said, okay, this is no accountability.
of this thing.
What's happening now is that there's been a fortification of the
Fortification is 砦か。砦。
power that the largest institutions have.
And you seem to think that it's more likely than not for some of these big bankers, for example, in Goldman Sachs, to be in government rather than just the conductor.
天下りあるのかって。
That's just the fact. Don Whitehead was the head of Goldman Sachs. Then in the Reagan administration, Bush administration, he became Deputy Secretary of State. Robert Rubin was the head of Goldman Sachs. He became the President's Chief Economic Advisor, became the Secretary of the Treasury. Steve Friedman was the head of Goldman Sachs. He became George Bush's Chief Economic Advisor. John Corzine was the head of Goldman Sachs. He became a senator and a governor. Hank Paulson was the head of Goldman Sachs. He became the Secretary of the Treasury. And so, you know, I mean, after a couple of those things, you stop thinking it's an accident, you know, and the ideology, the culture of a place like Goldman Sachs becomes the ideology of the senior policymakers in the United States government.
So the town Perkins system is, you don't get the thing unless you pay.
He is talking about, I don't know who he is, but he's talking about voting.
$1 in taxes.
But what I really think is, it should be like a corporation. You pay $1 million in taxes, you should get $1 million.
He said $1 million in taxes, you'll get $1 million votes. Okay.
It is as if.
So what he wanted to say, one vote, one person, not one person, one vote. Million vote, $1 million. This is depends on money. He said. He wanted to say.
If there's been a coup d'etat, call it the bankers' coup, leaving the government of the United States with one single purpose: to serve finance.
And the mortgage loans on your broken down shacks, yeah, they've been foreclosed by Goldman Sachs.
Is that it? Is the rule of the oligarchs the order of today? Is there any resistance? Can it succeed, or will it fail?
Well, it's kind of crummy, and it's really shoddy. That's a
crummy, shoddy, しょぼいか。
1% of
1% is actually not 1%, less than 1%. 400 family, 500 family. It's occupied 95% of GDP. This we're going to show the later video to show the concrete figures.
And the 1% of that 1%, hell, they own the 1% as well. This land is their land. This land ain't ours, friend.
After the bailouts, a public backlash seemed inevitable.
This 2008 very famous for Occupy Central. They tried to many protest at Wall Street. This guy is one occupied member of the leader. Okay.
So how does it feel now that you're here? And
this is now.
It feels dead right now. Definitely, this space was alive. It had a space for dreams. It had a space for people to step out of their alienation.
And now it seems to be almost fashionable to talk about inequality, with recent publications of the Princeton study and of the Piketty book.
I think the inequality got put on the table because of
Okay, he's talking about inequality, okay? Inequality. Actually, for 10 years, video showed, actually past 10 years, yes, I'll show you later. Rich people, past 10 years, rich people, 1% of rich people, their income will 3 times, and middle class people, they're reducing income actually the past 10 years.
Inequality is a euphemism for class. The people here, we're privileged people, largely white. It's a class that got demoted, right? The dream stopped working, and it stopped working so fast to the point that people found themselves taking to the street, politicized even though they weren't politicized. That we've identified the enemy, and it's 1%. And that 1% can probably be reduced to 400 to 500 families.
Now he said, right? Reduced to 400 to 500 families.
That own probably the largest 5 media corporations in the United States.
Okay, this is additionally, they own largest 5 media corporations.
What happened to that American? I think the American dream is an American nightmare right now. And I think people are slowly waking up. I think Occupy rang the bell. And I think you're going to
Occupy may have rung the bell, and for a moment the old economic consensus may have been shattered. But as the protesters were cleared from the streets, the oligarchs consolidated their power. According to Forbes, the Waltons are the rich.
Okay, Walton is second. The richest is Gates. Third is Koch family.
Richest family in America. The Cokes are the second richest.
Not pork, coke. Second, third, fourth, coke.
Along with a handful of powerful allies, they had an audacious plan to redraw America's electoral map. The Supreme Court lifted limits on campaign spending, and suddenly the doors were flung open. The billionaires used front groups like Americans for Prosperity.
Paid for by Americans for Prosperity.
Americans for Prosperity is responsible by American for this advertising. Americans for Prosperity is responsible for the content of this advertising.
One of the states they targeted was North Carolina. It had been controlled by Democrats for over a century. Their money...
Oh, this is talking about PAC is a system of donation money, unlimited. Everybody can donate the party or the Democrat, Republican.
Poured in. Attack ads ran day and night.
Americans for Prosperity is responsible.
Japan is of course limited, prohibited, right? But America is open.
When the election was over, the most radical Republican legislator in the South was in charge. They cut taxes for the rich, cut unemployment insurance.
So he's talking about they cut taxes for the rich, cut unemployment insurance, cut. This actually is current problem for Obamacare, saying, right?
Cut union rights. They blocked government medical care for 500,000 poor people. They made it more difficult to vote. And they changed the election districts to guarantee Republican domination for the foreseeable future.
The Democrats have 4 seats now. They will keep those. But the likelihood is the Republicans are going to control the legislature for the foreseeable future.
Dallas Woodhouse ran the Koch brothers group, American for Prosperity, during the 2010 and 2012 election campaigns. He now has a new political action committee called Carolina Rising.
So we would never talk about our donors.
He is talking about the Carolina Rising is invested by Koch family to support for Republicans.
We've seen, harassment of people who give to causes, so we don't do that. But of course, if you want to write me a check, I'll keep your confidence as well. You know what happened to the Democrats? For once, out of 100 years, they got beat. And now, they cry to the rest. They whine and moan the left-leaning media. They cry and moan. They do what losers do. They cry to the rest. That's what they do.
According to Dallas, even if they do it in secret, hiding behind front groups, the more billionaires spend, the better it is for democracy.
The more debate, the better. I hope there are a gazillion TV ads run. I mean, it seems like to me that people pick on Charles Koch and they pick on Art Pope, but the Democrats have their guys that run a lot of TV ads.
And in a world of TV campaign ads, money is speech.
Of course it is.
We're here to reclaim that house as the people's house. Repeal and repeal your attacks on Medicaid and the poor. Repeal and repeal of your attacks on unemployed workers and the working poor. Repeal and repent of how you have taken money out of the pockets of needy people and given it to the rich. Repent and repeal and return North Carolina to a moral.
His guy is, I don't know his name, but this is one of the protest movement and the same as Occupy Central.
Place of kindness and decency and fairness.
When Reverend William Barber started protesting,
Oh, he's a William Barber. I don't know him.
2013, he was arrested. But he went back, and it became a movement to fight and try to take their state back.
The Supreme Court now has become an enabler to those who want to buy our democracy.
And they're creating an environment where it's as though people are being treated like things and corporations are being treated like people. And they made a distinctive decision about how they would hold on to power in this nation, and that was they would go into the states. And what many liberals and progressives have got to understand is it's one thing to win congressional seats and one thing to win the presidency, but more important is what goes on in the state houses, because what goes on in state houses determine voting rights and determine redistricting lines for your Congress. And that's why you have to have a moral movement, because down through history, the only thing that's been able to break the back of that kind of economic domination have been moral movements. People in the street, people being willing to engage nonviolently, people being willing to speak out from our pulpits, people rising up.
Reverend Barber's coalition is impressive. The Monday protests have drawn as many as 80,000 people and have spread hundreds of cities around the state. But the Koch brothers' money and their newly drawn electoral map make
So I don't know how the protest movement, he said, 80,000 people spread 100 cities. Right? And Koch families, and also later going to some Walton is the second rich person. Those people, how is going to consider for balance of rich people for those of inequality? I don't know, but they try to big movement now.
Insulate them from the pressures in the street.
But they say in a democracy, you don't force things on people. These are elected governments, they're to make the laws. Oligarchs don't make the laws.
Oligarchs pay politicians to make the laws. That's what we have in the United States.
Okay, this is actually this message for the oligarch. Oligarch pay politicians to make the laws. That's what we have. You
think it's democracy for hire?
Yeah, it's definitely democracy for hire.
Can there be change? Is there a real possibility?
So they said they can change?
Of change, a crisis, some kind of a crisis that shows.
But the last crisis strengthened.
Exactly. It needs to be. Look, I think the reaction to the last crisis may be totally different from what you think it was. I think which was this is a big crisis, the biggest since the Great Depression. I think the reaction history may look at it, the last crisis, was that it was not big enough. It was not big enough to produce the changes that were necessary in the political system, the economic system, the banking system.
Still not insufficient for the last economic crisis. We need more big crisis, otherwise current system never change. And she's going to appoint, the policeman claim for those people sitting around here. Right?
Thank you. Let's go.
Okay, this is a finish. So, Takahashi, do you understand?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, very good. This is a very difficult video. I viewed many times. But very good one to understand oligarch, American oligarch. Okay? Then, here. Oops. Now coming back here. This one. I just put on the explanation for, I remember Walmart, Walden, and Blackwater, Prince. And also I just explained last 2 weeks ago. Then today I just talking about subprime loan. This one is also put on the explanation for here. She is talking very difficult to understand, but I put an explanation here. So if you're going to read this, after reading these sentences, so you can understand what this English means. Okay. Now is moving to another one. This one is proof of the U.S. is another video is oligarchy, U.S. oligarchy. This shows some here statistics. So you can much more better understanding of the current American oligarchy.
So the question has arisen, are we still a democracy? Well, the guy who actually asked that question is me, because I keep talking about how money has corrupted our politics, and that at the national level, we don't really have a functioning democracy anymore because our politicians aren't listening to us. Well, that's my opinion based on all the different stories that I've covered over the last 17, 18 years of covering politics. But now, some Princeton researchers, Martin Gillens and Benjamin Page, actually went back and did a study on this issue. They studied 1,779 different policy initiatives between 1981 and 2002. And then they published in Perspectives on Politics. It was a very respected journal. It's called Testing Theories of American Politics. So let's talk about how they did it. They said they then compared those policy changes, the ones that they studied, with the expressed opinion of the United States public, comparing the preference of the average American at the 50th percentile of income to what those Americans.
Okay, by the way, you need to understand he is talking about comparison of the 50th percentile of income and the 90th percentile of preferred. This means, okay, 50th percentile of income. 50番目、ちょうど真ん中の50番目の所得のある人。The 90th percentile is 90番目、下から10番目の所得のある人。を、this one is compare. Okay, and もちろんその下に as well as I can't see there, but okay, let's see. Yeah. As well as opinion, major lobbying or business groups, but also they much more prefer for 50th percentile rather than 90th percentile. Right? Okay? So, he's talking about this one.
Is that the 90th percentile preferred, as well as opinions of major lobbying or business groups. So now this is a really interesting way of doing it. They take an issue, they see which way did it go in the voting, right? And then they say, all right, at the time, what was the public opinion poll on the 50th percentile? And then the top 10%, and then lobbyists and business groups. I'm on pins and needles as I'm reading the beginning of this story to see how it turned out. Well, I have bad news for you guys. Quote, the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule,
minuscule is the same as near
zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. That is devastating. Now remember, this is before Citizens United, certainly before McCutcheon. And remember that we started talking about money in politics, and we started talking about Wolfpack before Citizens United. That's because, as I've told you on this show many times, the two devastating cases actually came in 1976 and 1978. Buckley v. Vallejo, where they said money is speech, and 78, where they said corporations have First Amendment rights and can spend money in politics. Ever since then, it has been an evolving disaster. And since then, as you can see from this study, over 1,800 different policies, and you had almost no effect on them. Now, this would be generally called an oligarchy. So look, a lot of times that word is thrown out and people don't know what it means. So I think it's important to define it. Policy might define it for you here, and I thought it was a good job, so let me read that to you. An oligarchy is a system where power is effectively wielded by a small number of individuals, defined by their
Okay. oligarchy is a system where power is effectively wielded by a small number of individuals defined by the status called oligarch. Members of the oligarchy are the rich, the well-connected, and the politically powerful, as well as particularly well-placed individuals in institutions like banking and finance, or finance, or the military. Okay. Okay.
Status called oligarchs. Members of the oligarchy are the rich, the well-connected, and the politically powerful, as well as particularly well-placed individuals in institutions like banking and finance or the military. Now, usually, Russia is referred to as an oligarchy, and a lot of other countries that are run by a small set of elites are referred to as an oligarchy, but almost never the United States. Well, it turns out, in reality, going all the way back to 1981 is when it starts. We, in fact, were run by small elites. And to me, it's not damning of all the rich, right? Your doctor didn't have anything to do with this. Oprah didn't have anything to do with it. It's people who are politically powerful and actually use that power to their advantage and to your disadvantage. Now, to that point, let me go to a different set of numbers put together by other professors that recently got news too, which is very important. Let me show you a chart here of how the different percentages this.
Okay, he's explaining this chart. This is 1980 till 2010. Red one is top 1%. Okay, the other three line is the other people. And the other people is no growth past many years. Especially you can focus on 2000 to 2010 for past 10 years. They are all like 1990, 1995. These people income is this actually 201% means 3 times. Okay, 100% is double, 200% is triple. Okay, so they increase their income. After tax income is 3 times or 4 times. Just only the past 15 years. Okay, and compared with the other people. No growth. This is a problem.
In America since 1980. And it's always 1980 that it goes back to. So in fact, if you're more clear on that, it's 1978 is when all the charts start diverging. And as you can see there, you've got bottom 20%, middle 60%, and the next 19% doing okay. They're hanging in there. And look, to be fair, they're actually rising a tiny bit through those decades. But that top line is the top 1%. And they are doing spectacular. And that's not an accident. That's over decades of time. That shows you a pattern. The pattern is the rules have been fixed in their favor. Okay? Now, has it gotten better? Look, we have had a Democratic president who lobbied and campaigned on change, and he's been in power for 5 years. In fact, as of September of 2013, since the Great Recession began in 2008, those 5 years, the top 1% captured 95% of all income gains since the Great Recession ended. Isn't that an amazing number? So when they say the economy is recovering, you have to understand something. It's not recovering for you. It's recovering for the top 1%. One more devastating fact about that, since September of 2013, the 99% saw a net 12% drop to their income. So since that's meaning the time between when the Great Recession started in 2008 to September of 2013. So unlike the earlier chart from decades ago, it's now gotten so bad, perhaps because of Citizens United adding fuel to that fire, putting the money in politics on steroids. It's now gotten to the point, even when the economy recovers, actually 99% of us still lose. Our income is no longer going up incrementally or a tiny bit. It's now going down. And after Citizens United, then we just recently got McCutcheon, which left even more limits on campaign financing. Look, it's not a small little issue campaign finance reform. It's not like, oh, well, look, I have strong feelings about war, which makes sense, or I have strong feelings about the environment, which makes sense. This is about our democracy. So your opinions on war, taxes, all that stuff is irrelevant if you don't live in a democracy. If you live in an oligarchy, they don't give a damn about your opinions on those issues anyway. There's only one issue. Who controls our politicians? And if you do private financing of elections, you will have the people who gave those large donations who control our politicians. That is obvious. It's a matter of logic, and now, through this study, it's a matter of fact. One more set of devastating graphs for you. First of all, the study's conclusion on our democracy, just to be clear, is America's claims to being a democratic society are seriously threatened. Now, I tend to think that they are understating them. I think at the national level, not at the state level, not at the local level, because I've seen democracy work there. But at the national level, when you're talking about Washington, D.C., it is not seriously threatened. It's gone. It's over. I mean, look, you just saw the numbers, but I'll give you more, as I said. Here's the graphs. Average citizens' preferences, how much did it affect policy?
Okay, you have a look, average citizen preference. 0%, 100% is about politicians' attitude and option. Okay, predicted probability, it means adoption by politicians, no change.
Line is what you have to concern yourself with there, okay? Well, that's what they're talking about when they say your opinion is insignificant. It did not make any difference.
Okay, he said insignificant.
Flat. Sorry. Not interested. All right, well, if all the lines are that way, you might say, oh, okay, well, at least it's fair. Let's take a look at the line for economic elite preferences. Yeah, that's a different line. That's the line that says it was highly correlated to the policy. The policy was connected to what the economic elites prefer. That is not an accident, it is by design. And how about interest group alignments, donors, lobbyists, special interests? Also very much aligned. We do not run our government. They run our government. I know that's really bad news. Of course, I think we can take it back. If you want to know how, you go to wolf-pack.com. Now, why did I start Wolfpack? Because I already saw this. I saw it in every story I covered. I saw it in every political article. The person with more money, the side with more money, won in every single instance. That's why we started Wolfpack in the first place. If you don't get a constitutional amendment to fix this, we're done for. We might as well just bow our heads and say, yes, they rule us, and accept our fate. But I don't accept that fate. Throughout American history, brave men and women have fought back. And in Wolfpack, we've got high school students, we've got people who are disabled, we've got people of every different background, race, ethnicity, age group. And you know what they're doing? They're calling their local state representatives, senators, and they are having a tremendous impact. And when you see democracy works, it's amazing. When you actually get a representative or senator to care about his constituents and to introduce legislation to fix things, it's the most wonderful thing you've ever seen. And then you really believe in democracy. Thank God it still exists.
Okay, he says you need to go to make effort. No. We have to have it close. Oh my God. Okay. Oh. Okay, this is a video for he gave us information, statistics. Then we are moving to another slide. United States and oligarchy, second one. This is small. Okay. They explained that the Koch brothers is David and Charles, number 3 and 4, have built their fortune on oil derivatives speculation. From Koch Industries, the second largest private company in the US, the family has long contributed massive amount of money to Republicans and Libertarians, and also wield the influence through millions in donations to free market and other advocacy groups through the Koch Family Foundation. Another one. Hillary Clinton placed dozens of her donors on State Department Advisory Board between 2009 and 2012, federal record shows. These were donors who had given either to her family's foundation, her political campaigns, or both, or were affiliated with groups that had. Those donors represented nearly 40% of the 511 advisory appointments the State Department made during Clinton's tenure. This one. Okay. Clinton board appointment. This is 2009. And this one, donors. Out of 500, 40% is appointed the donors. In one example, Rajiv Fernando donated up to $5 million, was named to the elite policy panel, despite having little experience in the area given his career as a financial trader. Hillary Clinton's team nonetheless lashed a top secret security clearance for Fernando so he could attend the meeting. On video, I just pick a video, but on video he didn't tell about that kind of this one. He said the nuclear panel. Nuclear panel, okay, not this one, but this one.そうなんだけど、これ誰にも教えてないから間違い電話なんですね。誰にも教えてないから電話でファックスなんかも送ってくんですけど出ないんです。誰にも教えてない。名刺にも書いてない。で、お金払ったんだけど失敗したんですね。固定電話いらないんだけど安かったから申し込んだんですけど、固定電話いらない。Okay, let's continue. This is the case of Fernando. Okay. This is another interesting. Just I explained just before that Hillary Clinton she is wrong. She's bad lady, very bad. Terrible.
So a conservative group is working in federal court to try to force the State Department to reveal records that can explain how a major donor to the Clinton Foundation got a seat on an intelligence advisory board. ABC News reports that aides to then Secretary Clinton insisted that a Chicago commodities trader be appointed to the International Security Advisory Board, which advises the Secretary on nuclear security.
He said nuclear security.
On nuclear security. And
this guy, Fernando, $5 million donated. And he is appointed nuclear security advisor. Can you believe this? He doesn't know anything at all.
Other classified arms control matters. Who knows?
Right?
But when State Department officials inquired about Fernando, who gave between $1 to $5 million to the Clinton family foundation,
$125 million.
They were told he was added by Clinton's chief of staff, Cheryl Mills. Quote, Raj was not originally on the list, sent to S, which is shorthand for Secretary Clinton. He was added at their insistence. The Clinton campaign told ABC that Fernando was appointed to the board
It's like a balance of backgrounds and points of view. Like, for instance, people that know absolutely nothing about intel, people that know absolutely nothing about nuclear security. Exactly. People on the board. And by the way, rich people who are completely ignorant about this. It was shocking to the people that actually were on that board. Calvin, his name exploded because he was so unqualified for it. But Cheryl Mills sent this Clinton family foundation donor over and forced him on there.
You want to balance qualified with unqualified. You get a range of skills. Every administration puts donors to various causes in jobs, but this is not making somebody ambassador to Belize or some other.
Also, he explaining some ambassadors, okay.
Country. This is a security position, and the proof that this one went over the line is as soon as it got scrutiny, they withdrew the guy.
Yeah.
But again, the Clinton people will say, "Oh, this is business as usual. Every administration does favors for its donors, but this one went over the line."
Right, but one where you're dealing with nuclear security?
That's ridiculous. Look, the government, unfortunately, is full of do-nothing jobs and board positions, the President's Council on the Arts, or whatever, for these donors to sit on and say they were a board member or something for the government or a presidential appointee. Even ambassadors. And ambassadorships to smaller countries. There are plenty of places to salt these guys away and check off the box. Why would you put him on this board of all boards?
Yeah. The campaign further added, it's not unusual for the State Department chief of staff to be involved in personnel matters, but Caddy K, I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine. Can you think of any other situation where you've got a guy who is rich and ignorant of nuclear, of the nuances of nuclear security, being in a position where he could influence our policy? It's unheard of, right?
I can't think of it. I mean, we'd have to ask, John's the historian. Maybe he can come up with a case where that happened. And it's not just small countries you get ambassadorships. The current ambassador to London, Matthew Barton, was also an early donor to the Obama campaign back in 2008. So they're a very big job.
But he does speak English.
So a conservative.
Okay, this is. She said, small countries ambassador it might be no problem, but someone is assigned to London. He is a big donor. So she said ridiculous. Okay. This is crazy, the American. That's the reason why Hillary defeated. Right? She's not fair. Okay. Next is Jimmy Carter. And also talking about oligarch with unlimited political library. This is a short video. This is another interesting story, and just almost same the part one more before video, but this is also talking about non-limit donation system America has. This short video.
President Jimmy Carter went on Tom Hartman's radio show, and Tom asked him about the issue of money in politics, and his answer is both refreshingly honest and a heartbreaking affirmation of what we already knew.
Now it's just an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery.
He said unlimited political bribery.
The essence of getting the nominations for president or the
It's a nomination for president, right?
elected president. And the same thing applies to governors and U.S. senators and Congress members. So now we've just seen a complete subversion of our political system as a payoff to major contributors who want and expect and sometimes get favors for themselves after the election's over.
Yeah.
I want everybody to understand that what he just said right there is not just an opinion. Some people think, well, that's his take on it, my take is different, or whatever. No. This isn't an issue where, hey, what does Bob think? Hey, what does Jeff think? No, there is an empirical reality out there, And President Jimmy Carter's right. Quote, Carter's comments mirror the conclusions of a Princeton University study released last year. Author Martin Gillens found that ordinary citizens have virtually no influence over what their government does in the United States.
Just I explained before, right?
Meanwhile, economic elites and interest groups, especially those representing business, have a substantial degree of influence. So, what we're talking about here, this is political science research over decades following the American political system and the legislation that we get implemented. And they found very simply and very clearly what the American people want, what the middle class and the poor want. It has a 0% effect on what policy we actually get. But where is there a very high correlation? Whatever the rich want. Whatever the corporations want, whatever Wall Street wants, whatever the billionaires want. What they want gets implemented all the time. What the middle class and the poor want, it's not even like, hey, 36% of the time you get what you want, which would still be abysmal because that's not even 50% in what's supposed to be a representative democracy. But no, it's not even that. 0%. 0%. So, only under a system that is objectively an oligarchy can we have a situation where, for example, 80% of the American people want a minimum wage increase. Majority of Democrats, independents, and Republicans. 80%, over 80% of the country wants a minimum wage increase. We haven't gotten it. How can that be? I mean, that's an open...
He said 80% people request for the minimum wage increase. But he said, we haven't gotten it. Okay? But the politicians don't listen to it.
In shut case, 80% and you can't implement it in what's supposed to be a constitutional republic and a representative democracy? That doesn't make any sense. How about over 90% of the American people said, let's just do simple, a universal background check on guns. There's no violation of the Second Amendment here, that's absolutely clear. We're just talking about basic, moderate, vanilla background checks to try to limit the number of gun deaths. Couldn't even get that. Overnight.
Okay, he's now talking about gun deaths. Okay, gun.
80% of the American people wanted it, couldn't get it.
Gun control, 90%.
You know,
okay?
I know why we couldn't get it. Because they're not listening to us. They don't give a fuck what we think. You know who they're listening to, right? Well, the NRA.
NRA is National Regulation Association. It's a gun control something association. Okay? Gun control association. Private.
Gives money. The gun manufacturers give money to the NRA. The NRA gives money to the politicians, and they give it to the Republican politicians specifically with the understanding, hey, this means that if anything comes up, any kind of gun reform, you block. So
90% against they support the gun control, but actually the gun manufacturing company donate money to this organization. So this organization is donate money to the politician. So this gun control will not going to be considered. RNA is here. NRA is oh. Sorry, I didn't explain what NRA means. I need to wait.
Reality, we have a situation where the people in America who should be the last people to make gun policy, the people who make the guns, they have a profit incentive in this whole race. They have a horse in this race. They're the people.
So this one is, I didn't know that. Why they do not prohibit gun control? Now it's obvious because this is gun manufacturer donate money to NRA. NRA contribute money to the politicians. That is the reason why. Okay? It's simple. This is democracy, he wants to say. But oligarchy, but this is democracy. It's money takes them all.
Who make the policy. So the people who would lose money if there's some kind of gun reform, they're the ones who say.
So it means I think we need to consider about China corruption. Which one is better? We cannot say which one is better, right? America is so lots of corrupted, but not black, but actually the million dollars donation, right, to the politician.
Okay, well, we don't want any gun reform. Yeah, we know you don't want any gun reform, but that's why you shouldn't be making the policies. Because you have a direct financial incentive against any kind of gun reform. So it doesn't matter what's good for the country, it only matters what's good for your bottom line. And because they're the ones influencing the political process with money, they get what they want. By the same token, Wall Street gives an untold amount of money to the politicians, and then what ends up happening? Well, when there's a collapse, when there's a stock market crash, because of bad decisions they made and a lack of regulation, who gets bailed out? Wall Street gets bailed out.
Oh, this one is just for my show video. She said Wall Street get bailout, okay? The same.
Because they paid their bribes, they did their donations, so they did legal corruption, they paid the politicians, and the politicians are the...
Do you remember donation? He said 20 billion US dollars, right? Donation.
You know, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. It's
Okay,
human
fine.
nature, man. It's not like these politicians are inherently inferior to you and me, or they're more evil than you and me. They're just functioning within a system that pushes them in the direction of always paying back the people who pay them money. Of course, it's a matter of where they get their financing from for their campaigns. And right now they get it from private interests. Who has the most money? Who are the most powerful private interests? The rich. Billionaires, Wall Street people, lobbyists, multinational corporations. So clearly you're going to have a government that reflects their interests. You have to get the cancer of the system out, so you make it so that the politicians better represent the American people. And the way to do that, the only way to do that, is to get the money out of the system. Now, people are going about it all different ways. I support every way in which people want to go about it, but I happen to think some ways are more effective than other ways. If you put a law on the books, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be enforced, and it could also be repealed from one administration to the next administration. But don't get me wrong, look, at a local level or state level, you want to do laws like that, by all means go right ahead. I just don't think on a federal level that that's the most effective way to combat the issue of money in politics. I happen to agree with Wolfpack. TYT is, of course, working on that. And the idea behind Wolfpack is you get a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics, and you make it so that it's just illegal. You can't have private donors give money to politicians. It runs on a system of what's called clean elections. So public financing of elections.
Oh, he's proposing donation system. Currently is how much money they can donate money for the political party, but he tried to control this.
Some sort of process to get into the election in the first place, and then when you get in, you get equal funds, and then it's simply a debate of ideas, as opposed to whose donors can pay the most money to prop up their candidate and run more ads and get their name out there more, and over 90% of the time win. Under a system where Bernie Sanders has the same amount of money as Jeb Bush and gets totally equal airtime to Jeb Bush.
Bernie Sanders is he just get money from different way of Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush is he got the money from a large bank, large company. Bernie Sanders is small amount of money from all over America. Finally, he got the same amount of money he got.
Who do you think's gonna win? Jeb Bush would get fucking no-goes. Even Jeb's family would be like, I don't know, this guy's kind of douchey. People are going to vote for the people who have the better message if the message is spread equally because they have equal money, they have equal funds, and they're not going to have anybody else to represent other than the American people because those will be the ones giving them the money. Now, understand, man, I would love it if we can have a real debate and a real conversation with, for example, conservative libertarians who are actually libertarian. You know, I would love it if we had zero establishment candidates, but as of right now, who are the front runners? The establishment candidates. Why are they the front runners? Because they're going to raise the most money.
So if you consider for the compare with Japan, America is a terrible country, right? So like Hillary, I just show you, and Bernie Sanders defeated, even he get money more fair way, right? Instead of Jeb Bush. But this is America, is very, so it means not democracy.
So the media takes them more seriously, they run more advertisements, they get their name out there more, they have higher name recognition, and you know the way it goes. They're much more likely to get elected. So we got to get the cancer out of the system. The cancer is the private money. Let's get rid of all these corrupt assholes, man. It's very simple. So we have to fight, we have to win on this, because if we don't win on this, then we will continue to be an oligarchy, we'll continue to be a kleptocracy, we'll continue to be a corporatocracy, and the government will continue to do none of what you and I want, and that's unacceptable.
Okay, this one.
President Jimmy...
This one is another interesting video, right?
What is his message?
Huh?
What is his message?
Oh, his message is okay. Very simple. Actually, many politicians got a lot of money through the bankers and manufacturing companies from private firms, but this is not fair. She's just proposing equal, donation.
So he proposed a regulating of the donation system.
Yeah. The last one he said, and so if so, like a gun control is kind of is eliminate all kind of system, right? It's currently many people, rich people, cook families, and many people, big amount of money for donating money for the government. So politicians is follow on those people. Obama is the same. Any kind of policy is just follow on these people. So if they're going to define like Japan, prohibit the big money donation. So no rich people can influence to the politician, right? So this is what he said he wanted to say.
So Obama case, he didn't get any donation from the rich people, which is
No. He's also got from rich people. That no donation is Trump. He has money, so he don't get donation from large. Actually, he just that reason why he won. He defined rich people. He said rich people is his enemy. He support for the ordinary people and middle class people or low class people. That's the reason why he got won. But his problem is plan of action is terrible. He don't have any political experience, and also he's not knowledgeable person. So that is, but his vision is very good. That's the reason he won. Otherwise, he couldn't win. Okay, you understand? Takashi, okay? Are you here? Oh no, he is sleeping. Okay, just next is Zakaria. I like his presentation, his speech. Always, he just this time is also he's talking about American democracy, and he criticized Trump.
To evaluate Donald Trump's presidency fairly. I've praised him when he has appointed competent people to high office, and he has, and expressed support for his policies when they seem serious and sensible, even though this has drawn criticism from some quarters. But there has always been another aspect to this presidency, lurking beneath the surface, sometimes erupting into full view as it did this week. Donald Trump, in much of his rhetoric and many of his actions, poses a danger to American democracy. What makes the American system of government distinctive is not how democratic it is, but rather the opposite. American democracy has a series of checks intended to prevent the accumulation and abuse of power by any one person or group. But there is one gaping hole in the system, the president. During his famous interviews with David Frost,
okay, just the American system is sort of protecting system, but only the one person, the president, can doing whatever he wants.
In 1977, Richard Nixon made a statement regarding Watergate that has been mockingly quoted ever since.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
In fact, Nixon was a smart lawyer and a close student of the American Constitution. He was basically right. The president, in effect, sits above the law. The Justice Department, after all...
Okay, said sit above the law. president. Okay? But Justice Department, just many cases, Trump order, executive order, but Justice Department denied his order, right? You remember? A ban for Islamists.
Works for him. And as Trump told the New York Times regarding separating himself from his business empire, the law is totally on my side, meaning the president
No, actually, no, not his side.
can't have a conflict of interest. Most lawyers say Trump is right. The rules don't really apply to the president. There is just one real check on the president, impeachment. And it is political, not legal. Since Trump's own party controls both chambers of Congress, there has been little
Yeah, he said impeachment. This is possible.
resistance to him there. So far, it appears that the Republican Party is losing any resemblance to a traditional Western political party, instead simply turning into something more commonly found in the developing world, a platform to support the ego, appetites, and interests of one man and his family. There are other less potent checks on the power of the president. Some are structural, others simply a matter of morality or precedent. Trump has sought to destroy almost every one of these, both before the election and now in the White House. This week, he summarily dismissed FBI Director James Comey, reportedly over his investigation of Russian collusion in the American election. If true, the firing would be a shattering blow. The nonpartisan agencies of the executive branch are jewels of the modern American system. They were not always impartial, and they are certainly not perfect, but in recent decades they have acquired a well-deserved reputation. When I travel from Eastern Europe to China to Latin America, Democratic reformers tell me that they look to these agencies as models when trying to strengthen the rule of law in their own countries. There are only two forces left that can place some constraints on Donald Trump: the courts and the media, and he has relentlessly attacked.
He said that currently try to control Donald Trump is actually the courts, federal courts and local courts and media against him, against his executive order.
Both. Every time a court has ruled against one of his executive orders, the president has ridiculed the decision or demeaned the judges involved. That leaves the media. Trump has gone at them, at us, like no president before, smearing news organizations, attacking individual journalists, and threatening to strip legal protections guaranteed to a free press. We will survive, but we must recognize the stakes. The media must cover the administration's policies fairly, but it also must never let the public forget that many of the attitudes and actions of this president are gross violations of the customs and practices.
He said gross violation of custom practices
of the modern American system, that they are aberrations and they cannot become
aberrations, the
new norms. That way, after Trump, the country will not start the next presidency with tattered standards and sunken expectations.
He's just expecting another president.
Our task is quite simply to keep alive the spirit of American democracy. For more, go to CNN.com.
Okay.
He just supporting the democracy in America, but he didn't any talking about oligarchy.
Of course, he don't deny. He don't talking about any oligarchy. He just criticized Trump. Okay, he criticized Trump.
So United States president is under the law, so that this is why the American is democracy. Under the law means checking system.
No, not under the law. Just Trump. Just okay. Court, rule of law, and media is try to keep American democracy. It means actually Trump does not keep those issues, so media and law are against him. Right? So he's just sort of things he's talking about. You got it? Now I'd like to move into United Kingdom. And United Kingdom, another oligarchy. The main flaw that allowed the UK to evolve into oligarchy is due to the shareholder capitalism. The inevitable dispersal of ownership that occurs in widely held listed companies leads ineluctably to the entrenchment of management power. Few would deny that Britain has become more unequal society in the past 3 decades. While pay has stagnated for employees, it has rocketed for those in the executive suite, the same as America. Top company bosses who receive 45 times the average employee's wage in 1998 has jacked this up to 120 times by 2010. The financial crisis has exploded the old argument that the increases were down to improving performance. As Mount points out, while the FTSE All-Share Index fell by 30% between 2000 and 2008, cash payment to executive increased 80%. Okay? Then elections are also seeing a large drop in turnout. In the 1950s, Britain's two main parties had more than 7 million members between them. Now it's perhaps just only 400,000. As a political commentator, Ferdinand Mount, Mount is a commentator. The problem is not the Britons are apathetic, but that power has become separated from the electoral process. Because actually they are not apathetic, separated from the electoral process. It's the rich people control. Top British Labour Party figure Jack Straw and Sir Malcolm Lifkind, overseer of British intelligence agencies, have been caught on camera offering political influence for cash. Caught on camera is caught on camera offering political influence for cash. Jack Straw boasted that he could operate under the radar and would do so for at least £5,000 per day. Lifkind suggested that he could offer useful access to British political system for the right price. I don't understand that this is okay. It's under the radar. What does it mean under the radar? Anyway, he wants to say very easy to control the political system, right? And easy to get money, offering political influence. This is his kind of his business is £5,000 per day, maybe, and useful access to the political system for the right price. Maybe she is paying money for the £5,000 per day for political system, so he can easy to control. Operate under the radar means he try to control politicians. What? This one is also イギリスは金のために何でもする。Prostitute Bashu, prostitute state, he said. The guy is he written this book, so he just make answer for this interview.
We are in London with Donald McCarthy, who was a deputy chairman of Liberal Democrats. Now you are independent, you don't belong to any party, but you are an environment.
His English is very heavy local dialect. I don't know what kind of dialect does he have, but he speak medication for him. He's the guy who's written a book of the prostitute state. イギリスは何でもする国っていうのを書いた人ね。
A supporter of environmental issues, and you wrote a book about the prostitute state. So you say that the British state is acting on behalf of lobbies, on behalf of private interests of oligarchies, and it has been somehow.
This is exactly the same as the United States he's talking about, right?
Told by politicians to this private interest.
Yeah, I spent 12 years in mainstream politics. I was on deputy chair of the party for 2 years, on the board for 7 years. And after that time, one of my aims was to, as a passionate environmentalist, I was hoping Global Democrats would be a vehicle to challenge the lack of action in Britain on climate protection. But when I was in the party, I came across a significant amount of what I call corruption. What I mean by that is large donors were buying seats in the Lords from the party.
The same as America, but the UK the same as donation, he said, corruption.
The way the party was funded by large corporations, and more significantly, the amount of corporate lobbyists who were around the leadership. So we had lobbyists both in the party's committees, in the party's advisors, and most importantly, even in the party's parliament party in the Lords. And what happens is that when MPs are stepped down from being in Parliament, the skill that they've got is they know how Parliament works. But it's not the poor people in Peckham who have the money to hire them, it's the corporations who hire them. Because
the same thing he's talking about, not ordinary people. This is a corporation hiring him.
Parliament works, the knowledge of the people, the knowledge of civil servants. And so that acts to completely distort the agenda of our Parliament, because what happens is that the access to Parliament is restricted really to the rich. And so that, in my mind, is a disaster, because over the last 40 years...
Okay, this is exactly the same as the United States, right?
Here, we've seen the agenda move significantly to the right. So we've become a corporate, what I call a prostitute state. But that's just one pillar of it.
So, if I understand well, an MP, when he finishes his political career, he has another career in corporations.
That's correct. You can earn anything from 80,000 to $500,000, depending on whether you're a government minister, a prime minister.
He's 80,000 he's talking about amount. He's just a makudari.
A prime minister earns 10 million a year, something like that.
Is this an award for what?
For
a prime minister case is 10 million makudari.
Tax. It's that they know the people, they know the system. So they have inside knowledge of how civil service works, how government regulation works, how the legislative process works. So if you are a corporation and you want the government's laws to suit you, or the tax laws, for instance, you buy their expertise, and then they're able to lobby and inform you and lobby the people inside government on your behalf.
So it means he tried to, donors can control just the tax system, he said.
Or maybe this is also an award for what these people have done, or some of these people have done during their office for the corporations.
Not necessarily. More often than not, no, it's more straightforward buying expertise and inside knowledge and contacts. There may be some situations where, for example, in the European Commission, or where people may have been compromised by their job in their department. Because it doesn't look good when a minister moves straight from awarding a contract to an arms dealer or an arms corporation and then moves into their board 6 months later.
About the politics and not only, are social classes open now in Britain or not? So, for example, Sadiq Khan, who is the mayor of London, is the son of a bus driver, is an exception, or there are many other cases?
When he was going to college, college tuition was free, and so that generation of politicians, there is a large number of those people who have managed to get into the system and get up through the ladder. But the point of the thesis behind the prosecutor state is that a lot of the power doesn't lie with the politician. It lies with the corporations, and more importantly, the second pillar of the prosecutor state, which is our prosecuted media. In the United Kingdom, around 5 far-right extremist billionaires own our media. Something like 80% of newspapers, they own book companies, they own the press agencies, they own TV companies, they own radio stations.
He's talking about also media occupied by these people.
So almost everything you're listening to, speaking to, or reading.
So why is not the people able to organize to create an alternative?
If you control access to information, you control the agenda. So in Britain, even though it was public knowledge, for example, we were speaking earlier about the Iraq War, it was public knowledge that the neocons who controlled the Bush administration were very open that they wanted to topple Hussein for the oil interests of America. But the media creates an atmosphere that to speak of that is outside the pale. So if you control the agenda and access to information, it's very challenging for the population at large to organise to regain the power.
This is the first carbon negative home in London. How is this problem, the political problem you have explained us now, affecting the environment?
The fact that they actually can buy the extraordinary access that the oil industry has to the government processes is mind-blowing. For example, Nick Clegg, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, was a lobbyist for the oil and gas industry. Vincent Cable, who was the party's Secretary of State for Business, was the chief economist for Shell Oil. The government's head of the civil service, the new director of the civil service, comes from the fracking industry. The government's chief director, who appoints people to all the boards of the government, comes from the oil and fracking industry. So, for example, Shell regularly organises workshops for government ministers, or for government departments, internally inside the government. But
he's talking about very close connection with oil company and the government officials.
No group like Greenpeace would have access to working with the civil servants that way. So basically, it's almost an oligarchy. Not an oligarchy, no oligarchy in the United Kingdom. And so what that means, of course, is that all of the legislation and the power, so the government is...
Okay, so actually so oil company and government officials, they close tied up, so they are making legislation and power be handled by these people.
All is way behind fracking and actually putting a brake on all the action on climate change. So, but if you take a step back, why is that allowed to happen? And now we go back to the second pillar. The fact that that is going ahead, so for example, the government's introduced taxation on renewable energy.
So he said result, they're going to tax for the renewable energy, which is against oil companies, right?
It's introduced a climate change tax on renewable energy. Complete farce.
So he said climate change tax is ridiculous.
Nobody probably knows that because the media doesn't tell them. And so I believe, as having gone through this 12 years of politics, that the top political challenge in the United Kingdom is to challenge these people. And so I've set up an organisation called Advertising Action Climate Project, which is launching a campaign called Climate De-Advertising Campaign, whose aim is to persuade those corporations that believe in climate change to stop advertising with the climate skeptic propagandist newspapers in the United Kingdom, because that's the only place we can actually change politically in this issue, in my opinion.
How powerful is in Britain the Saudi monarchy, the influence of the Saudi monarchy?
It's quite chilling, actually, the power it has. I mean, as we know, the Saudi regime has an appalling human rights record, which this government continues to sell arms to, contravening its own human rights regulations. The British aerospace was involved in very high level corruption. And through the tax right.
Oh, he is talking about Saudi Arabia and UK relation. Saudi Arabia the cause problem human rights. But he said lot of trade, dealing business with them. So we do not criticize human rights for them.
Our Yamama deal, multi-billion pound project, involving the Prime Minister's son who got rich out of it. And when the corruption on this was just about to be dealt with by the fraud office, and the documents were being to be released by Switzerland, the Prime Minister stepped in and closed the whole investigation down, despite the fact that the United Kingdom has signed up to anti-corruption international treaties. That is how powerful the Saudi Arabian family was, because they were likely to be involved in the scandal.
What do you think about Tony Blair and especially Iraq war? Now there is this report, and maybe there could be, in theory, there could be consequences for him.
Oh, by the way, I think you should know Tony Blair is the prime minister at the time of the Iraq war, and he followed Bush false information, mass disruption weapon Saddam Hussein had. This is wrong information. Blair followed Bush's opinion. Then many British soldiers dead. So he is currently criticized by British people. He's talking about this.
Well, I very much hope to see him either at the bar of the House of Commons, helping content for the House of Commons, or that the families of the Iraq war veterans manage to take him to court. Because unfortunately, the legislation doesn't allow us to take him to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. It's very clear from the Chilcot report that he must have the country, he must have the government, he must have Parliament. He had done a deal with George Bush that come whatever, Britain was going to back the invasion.
Why?
Of Iraq, no matter what the United Nations said, or no matter whether they found weapons of mass destruction or not, the whole thing was a
This
scam.
is the mass destruction.
But Blair was determined to go with Bush. Now, you're asking yourself why. And I think you have to go back to the very origins of Tony Blair's power in the United Kingdom, which was a deal he did with Murdoch. In 1996, Murdoch flew out to Hayman Island.
Oh, by the way, Murdoch is king of media. He originally came from Australia, but he moved to the United States, but he's just a governor of the global media.
In Australia, and had a negotiation with Murdoch and did a deal with Murdoch. And the deal was Blair would not tackle cross-media ownership, would allow Murdoch to own more of the media in the United Kingdom than the Tories would at the time under John Major. So Murdoch backed Blair's election as Prime Minister. Blair sold the soul of the Labour Party. Logical consequence of that is if you sell your soul, you're in cup with the devil. Murdoch was determined to have the Iraq invasion, and he lobbied Blair phenomenally hard to invade Iraq with Bush. And that's, to my mind, a scandal, is a war crime.
But also the Tories did not oppose that war.
That's correct. The official opposition didn't oppose it. You have to remember, historically in Britain, parties that opposed the government going to war were normally trashed by the media and sometimes wiped out almost. So taking a stand against war has historically been seen as political dynamite. So as Deputy Chair of the Lib Dems, I was passionately against the war, and I campaigned very hard to ensure our party and our party leader was pushed off the fence and opposed the war. And that proves, I'm very proud that we did. We did oppose the war, we voted in Parliament against it, and it didn't result in us being wiped out as a political force.
And this was a victory of yours.
I thought I contributed a lot towards it. Obviously, no victory in politics is ever down to one person with a group campaign, but I led the campaign to ensure the party opposed the war, ensure that Kennedy voted against the war in the end. But I feel very proud of what we did is that we set a precedent of a political party opposing war, and it survived. In my view, that allowed the subsequent vote 10 years later on Syria for the major opposition, the Labour Party then, to actually oppose the war. So it is now, in my view, a positive achievement that political parties can take honest opinions about war in the British Parliament.
And finally, about refugees, there are also refugees which are escaping from climate change, were, however, partly forced to leave their country.
Oh, he is talking about refugees relating to climate change. Syria is, they had for several years some bad climate, so they can't get crops from agriculture. So that caused many refugees, not only war. So famine, he's talking about. Famine.
Because of the climate change. And someone said that also in Syria, the war broke out after problems of agricultural problems may be caused by climate change.
Yes, a number of international experts believe that there was a massive prolonged drought in the Syrian countryside.
This is one thing is the UK support to Syria involvement, Syria war against ISIL, with also Syria caused problem, prolonged drought, he said. But instead, UK tried to just caused a lot of refugees, right? 4 million. But actually, UK tried to prohibit their immigration. That's the reason, major reason the UK drew from EU. This is a big discrepancy. They cause a reason problems in Syria, cause them more refugees, but they don't accept those refugees get into the UK. They don't protect those people. So this is big discrepancies actually occur. Yeah. Actually, he is talking about this message.
That led to massive fleeing from the land into the big cities. And the Syrian regime wasn't able to cope with the consequences. However, added to that mix was ISIS, which again evolved out of the American and UK invasion of Iraq. So those two things together has led to absolute devastation in Syria, which is heartbreaking. Ironic, of course, is that those refugees have been fleeing to Europe, and then Britain pulls out of the European Union because we don't want refugees. I mean,
right, he's talking about this issue.
This is totally morally bankrupt. We create a massive problem for the European Union.
Totally morally bankrupt, he said.
We destabilize it, then we say bye-bye. Shocking.
Last question. Is there any politician now in Britain, prominent politician, who is outside the lobbies?
Yeah, actually, since I wrote the book, two positive things have emerged.
Just listen, very interesting thing he will say. He's just supporting Labour Party, Corbyn.
Nick Clegg wasn't, sorry, not Nick Clegg, Tim Farron in the Liberal Democrats. He was not from the fiscal lobbying classes, which is unusual. And secondly, Jeremy Corbyn.
Right, Jeremy Corbyn, he supported.
The Labour Party is not from the lobbying classes. So interestingly, the two opposition parties at the moment, for the first time in decades, are not led by the lobbying political classes. I think that's why, in many ways, Corbyn is absolutely receiving from the Blairites in the centre-left, right through the Tories. The entire billionaire media are actually out to destroy him, because he represents a threat to the prostitute state. The only reason I think he's so successful is that the younger generation don't read the mainstream billionaire media. They get their news online, and so those people are absolutely adamant that we have to get the billionaire class out of our politics and to get the corporate lobbying classes out. And that's where Corbyn's, in my view, enthusiastic base is. And so interesting times, we have the parliamentary party sourced in the fiscal lobbying prostitute state, and the membership of the Labour Party not involved in it, and that's what the clash is happening at the moment.
Okay. Takashi, you understand? Are you waking?
Yeah, yes. So I share with the
UK is the same as States. And the last message, I think you need to understand. UK supporting the war in Syria, and they cause a lot of refugees. But UK prohibit to accept those refugees to get in their country. This is their big discrepancy, you know? Not fair. That he said moral. UK don't have no moral. So I agree with him. Right? I need to add some comment from Japanese later. Yeah, that one. Okay. Actually, Wednesday is 2 hours, so last Wednesday just finished this video, but we have more another 45 hours, 45 minutes. So I try to proceed on Prime Minister Theresa May on Sophie Leach. Sophie Leach is a famous commentator. She is young but very smart, and this is actually on Sunday full interview, and you can listen to her. Theresa May British is very good British speaking, but she herself that negotiating EU is a little bit ridiculous actually, but her presentation is okay, but her herself message to EU, she tried to keep the current position of they want to get into the single market. No kidding. But he to speak out those kind of, even depart from EU member, but he tried to doing business as usual. Of course, I understand what his one stance is. British is very heavy involved in supply chain management in Europe, car manufacturing, everything else. So if they cannot charge tax for the automobile parts and everything else, electronics the same. But this is actually ridiculous. So she cannot sustain her position for many months, I believe. They need to pick another one. So another one might be this one, this guy. Later, they call me Jeremy Corbyn. So okay, I'm going to show you Jeremy Corbyn, but maybe not today. If possible, I show you. And this beforehand, I think I need show the video. I need to show you some keyword before showing. She said the name is coming. Ivan Rogers is coming. The name of his name. He was a representative from UK for EU. He resigned. Okay, and also another one. His name is coming. David Davis. He is at Brexit voting. In this case, he just support to leave EU, and then May assigned him as a minister for leave EU. And also in her interview, she talking about NHS is National Health Service, and also this one is I don't know. Oh, here. Other major things in UK. UK is I didn't know that, but they said mental health problem, and 1 out of 6. She said 1 out of 5, but this Wikipedia said 1 out of 6 they have mental health problems. So this is going to a lot of investment for the health insurance. So this is 1 out of 4. May said. So this is information you should understand. Okay, just you're going to have a look. This is very interesting video, especially her British English is perfect. Of course, he's British. Yeah. But you can have a study. And Sophie's English is typical British English, but she's English is typical. It's not easy to listen. But Theresa May is very clear British English. Theresa May. Just about 25 minutes or so.
Well, we're joined now by the Prime Minister, Theresa May. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
It's a pleasure to be here for your new programme, Sophie.
Thank you.
Beautiful English.
We've just been watching that film from Boston, where people were talking about their concerns about immigration, about wages being undercut, about concerns about antisocial behaviour. And I was really struck by some of that anger at how immigration has been managed. Well, you were Home Secretary. Immigration went up to record levels. So are you to blame for some of that anger?
No, we put a number of changes in place in relation to immigration when we came in, precisely because we recognised the concerns that people had about immigration. The reason why we were looking to bring those changes in was because we knew that, particularly for people on lower incomes, immigration did have an impact on their wages. But I think what the film that we've just seen shows that when people voted in the referendum on the 23rd of June, yes, they voted to leave the European Union, but they also voted for change. And this year, 2017, is the year in which we start to make that happen. And that's why, over the coming weeks, I'll be setting out more details of my plan for Britain. And yes, that's about getting the right deal for Brexit, but it's also about economic reform. We'll be publishing a housing white paper, a green paper on our industrial strategy. It's also about social reform. I'm giving a speech tomorrow. I'm going to focus on some of the injustices, particularly mental health, and the stigma that still attaches to mental health. So it's about getting the right deal internationally. It's also about a fair deal at home.
I'm very keen to talk about your domestic policy agenda and your shared society. But let's just stick to immigration and Brexit for a moment, because certainly that is what a lot of people are very concerned about at the moment. Do you think that people will trust you to deliver that? Because you haven't always been able to deliver in the past. I think we can just bring up on the screen, actually, something that you said back in 2010 when you were Home Secretary, about reducing net migration to the tens of thousands. The British people want us to do it, and it's the right thing to do, so we will do it. But you didn't do it, so why should people think it's different this time?
Well, I think what people will look at is the fact, first of all, that we recognise the importance of immigration. We were the first government to say that, yes, this is an issue that we need to address. Precisely because of the problems, precisely because of the impact it has on people, particularly those on low incomes, as I say, and research has shown that in certain circumstances it does lead to mean that people aren't able to get jobs and that their income is held down. They get lower wages as a result. So that's why...
Red line then for you in the Brexit negotiations. Will immigration be a red line?
Well, what, if I can just finish, that's why we looked at changing and did bring changes to immigration from outside the EU. But of course, immigration from inside the EU, with free movement, was an area that we weren't able to bring any controls into. I've consistently said that the referendum vote was a vote for us to change that freedom of movement, was a vote for us to bring control into our immigration system for people coming from the European Union. There's a variety of ways in which that can be done, but I'm clear that that is part of what we need to deliver.
So does that mean that in the EU negotiations you are prepared to prioritise full control over immigration above membership of the single market?
Well, you see, this is where it's important for us to look at this issue in the right way, because I think often people talk in terms of somehow we're leaving the EU, but we still want to kind of keep bits of membership of the EU. We're leaving, we're coming out, we're not going to be a member of the EU any longer. So the question is, what is the right relationship for the UK to have with the European Union when we're outside? We will be able to have control of our borders, control of our laws. This is what people were voting for on the 23rd of June. But of course, we still want the best possible.
What she's speaking out is 虫のいい虫がいい Yes, some sort of what she's ridiculous.
Deal for us companies to be able to trade, companies to be able to trade in and operate within the European Union, and also European companies to be able to trade with the UK and operate within the UK.
So if you're
No, she cannot.
saying that we do want control of the borders, that effectively means we can't be members of the single market. Angela Merkel, for example, has been quite clear on this. This is what she said in December. That if
That's right. Okay, don't allow cherry picking.
you want free movement of goods and services, you need free movement of people, you will not allow any cherry picking. Be straight with people. We're not going to be members of the single market, are we?
What I'm talking about is getting the right relationship for the UK with the EU.
So this is she's talking about a very vague message, right relationship with EU. What does it mean?
We mustn't think about this as somehow we're coming out of membership, but we want to
Coming out of membership, what does this mean?
keep bits of membership. What we must
Keep bits of membership? What do you
say
mean?
is what is the right relationship for the United Kingdom that is no longer a member of the European Union.
No longer a member of the European Union. It's cut out.
And there's a whole range of issues on which we obviously will be part of the negotiations. Once I trigger Article 50, we enter those formal negotiations. A big bit of that, of course, is what our trading relationship is. There are other areas, like on the justice and security front, about what our relationship continues to be in those areas as well. But what we're saying is, what is the right deal for the UK? Not a model that somebody else uses, but what's going to work for the UK. And I think that the best possible deal for the UK will also be a good deal for the EU. We're leaving the EU, we're not leaving Europe. We want to continue.
He said, we are not leaving Europe, we're leaving EU. And he wants to still continue to some sort of relationship with Europe, she said. Right? I can see what she's talking about something.
We need to have those good relationships with members of the European Union.
It's the third time I've asked a question. I was hoping to get an answer about immigration and single market. I know that you don't want to give a running commentary, but I think it is important for people to know the broad basis of where we're going. That's certainly what people in Boston would need to know.
Yes,
Are you prioritising immigration over membership of the single market?
What I'm saying is this. I mean, first of all, I will be setting out some more details in the coming weeks as we look ahead to triggering Article 50. But what I'm saying is that I think it's wrong to look at this.
Article 50 is leave EU article, okay?
It's just a binary issue as to either you have control of immigration or you have a good trade deal. I don't see it as a binary issue. We will, outside the European Union, be able to have control of immigration and be able to set our rules for people coming to the UK from member states of the European Union. But we also, as part of that Brexit deal, will be working to get the best possible deal in the trading relationship with the European Union.
Okay, I think that is clearer. We are getting control of immigration. I think we can have...
It is a binary issue. We will, outside the European Union, be able to have...
Outside the European Union, be able to have control
of
immigration
and be able to set our rules for
able to set our rules
for people coming to the UK from member states of the European Union.
She is talking about EU members staying in UK and in and out. He will guarantee for them.
But we also, as part of that Brexit deal, will be working to get the best possible deal in the trading relationship with the European Union.
Okay, I think that is clearer. We are getting control of immigration. I think we can perhaps read between the lines there. One person who perhaps wasn't so confident in your plan for Brexit this week was your chief diplomat to Brussels, who resigned. Sir Ivan Rogers as well wrote a pretty explosive letter while he did it, attacking what he described as ill-founded arguments and muddled thinking. Prime Minister, are you muddled?
Not at all. And if I can just come back to the last point, just to reiterate this point, because I think it's very important. Anybody who looks at this question of free movement and trade as a sort of zero-sum game is approaching it in the wrong way. I'm ambitious for what we can get from the UK in terms of our relationship with the European Union, because I also think that's going to be good for the European Union. So our thinking on this isn't muddled at all. Yes, we've been taking time. I said we wouldn't trigger Article 50 immediately. Some said we should. Jeremy Corbyn said we should. But actually, there haven't been any plans made for Brexit, so it was important for us to take some time to actually look at the issues, look at the complexity of the issues, and that's why, as I said we didn't trigger immediately, but we will trigger by the end of March this year. The work that is being done has set out very clearly for us how complex this is, but also how important it is for us to approach this in the right way. And the right way to look at this is to say we will be outside the EU. So we're not leaving Europe. We want a good relationship with the EU.
Oh, she said the same message many times. Leaving Europe, we want a good relationship with the EU.
Good bilateral relationship with
good bilateral relationship with individual
countries. But we will be outside the European Union.
She said even if leave EU, but she tried to keep the current almost similar level of, or she tried to keep on single market. But Germany and any other major France, and they will not accept her opinion, actually. After this video, she just speak out the same message to EU member, but rejected, right? Of course, they do not accept it. Without payment for the European Union Parliament and the other dues, right?
Union, but we will get the best possible deal for the UK in terms of our trading relationship with the European Union. Everything else.
So I don't know what's going on trading relationship. Of course, like a German car got benefit from the parts import from UK, and also electric and many other things. We trade, lot of trade in each other. Right? So are they going to charge for the tax for UK, or UK will go and tax for EU product? I don't know what's they're going to do. But they 100% for sure, EU members, they do not treat the same condition as the other rest of EU members, right? So very difficult. So finally, if they continue current situation, what she's talking about, she offer still a member of European country, European area, territory, so forth, and she want to get fair business, trade, and so things she's tried to push it forward. Maybe EU will cut it out, cut EU out, right? So finally, she resigned, and Colvin, as a prime minister, tried to recover the EU membership. Did not have probably, maybe this is the final decision there to go. But what she's talking about is discrepancy. She leave EU, but he want to protect the merit of EU member, right? It's impossible.
Saying suggests that we are leaving the single market and trying to have trade deals. Why don't you just admit it?
Yeah. What I'm saying is that we want the best possible deal. For the phrase I've used is the best possible.
What is the best possible deal?
Deal for trading with and operating with.
She said trading with and operating with in Europe.
In the single European market.
Right?
Now, we want prosperity for our businesses for the future. I think this is an important relationship for us, and it's an important relationship for member states as well, for countries in the European Union, for their businesses too. But what I'm looking at is not the means to the end, but what the outcome is. And I think this is so important. What people want is for us to focus on the right outcome for the UK. Actually, there'll be a variety of ways in which we get there. But people who simply talk about issues around membership of the single market, access to the single market, are looking at the means. I'm looking at the outcome, and the outcome is a really good, ambitious trade deal for the UK with the European Union that enables our companies to trade with, trade in, and operate in the European single market. And that's both goods and services, because of course for the UK, financial services, the services sector generally, is a very important part of our economic relationship with the EU.
80% of the UK GDP services, of course. Sir Ivan Rogers, how embarrassing was that for you?
Yeah. So Ivan Rogers had been a dedicated civil servant. He made it clear that he would have been leaving in November anyway. So Tim Barrow is an excellent negotiator. He's replaced Sir Ivan. He's got a very good experience in Europe. But this is not just about one individual in a particular post. It's actually about how the whole of government is approaching this. And that's why I set up a specific department, the Department for Exit in the European Union, with the Secretary of State, David Davis, with civil servants who are...
Right, Ivan and David Davis, as I explained for you before.
Focusing on the Brexit arrangements, but obviously they're working across the whole of government as well. Every department is looking at the issues that they will need to address as we leave the European Union and consider not just what that deal is in relation to the EU, but what is the future for the UK. And that's where I'm optimistic and ambitious, because we will be able to have trade deals around the world, we'll be able to ensure that we're doing what is right for the UK.
I'm keen to talk about your domestic policy agenda as well. Before we go on to your vision for a shared society, I do want to ask you about the NHS, because that is the #1 issue that people have been contacting me.
Okay, now she is going to move into healthcare.
About saying you must ask the Prime Minister about this. And things do look pretty bad. The Red Cross said yesterday it's a humanitarian crisis with people dying in toilets and corridors. What are you going to do?
Well, I don't accept the description the Red Cross has made of this. Yes.
I don't know that the Red Cross they criticize the UK. Some people dead in lorries, some kind of accident or something. And now she's going to move into mental health issues.
There are huge pressures on the NHS. I think first of all we should thank all those dedicated professionals in the NHS who've been working so hard over what is always a difficult period in terms of the number of people using the NHS. That's the Christmas and New Year period. We had, I think it was something like 150,000 medical professionals working in the NHS on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. And I want to say thank you to them for the work that they're doing.
By the way, British NHS is a very good system, and better than Japan. They just medical charges 自己負担ほとんどない。Right? Yes.
Yes, there are significant pressures, but we recognise those pressures. We asked the NHS a while back to set out what it needed over the next 5 years in terms of its plan for the future and the funding that it would need. They did that. We gave them that funding. In fact, we gave them more funding than they required. So funding is now at record levels for the NHS. More money has been going in.
So, just quickly, from your answer, it doesn't seem like you're gearing up to do an emergency statement on the NHS tomorrow, as some people have asked for.
Look, there are pressures in the NHS, and we see those pressures. We have an ageing population. This brings pressures, particularly in the interface between the health service and social care. That's why we've taken some immediate steps in relation to that issue, but we're also looking to ensure best practice in the NHS and looking for a long-term solution to what has been a problem that's been ducked by government over the years. But the NHS is facing the pressures of the ageing population. That's why it's important that it's the NHS itself that has produced its 5-year plan and is now putting that plan into practice.
Tomorrow you're going to be giving a speech on the shared society, which sounds like a great slogan, but what are the actual details behind what you want to do?
Well, I think, first of all, what's important is that we recognise this is about dealing with everyday injustices, but it's also about us all recognising our obligations as citizens within the communities and the society that we have here in the UK. It's about recognising that there is a role for government, but government needs to ensure that it is acting as effectively as possible in those areas where it should be taking action. And one of the areas that I'm going to focus on tomorrow particularly is the whole area of mental health. There's still a huge stigma attached to mental health here in the United Kingdom. I was talking to somebody earlier today and they were making the point that in the workplace, if you break your arm and you go in with your arm in cast or in a sling, people will come up and talk to you about it. If you have a mental health problem, people are more likely to try to avoid you. We must get over this stigma. We must ensure that we're providing the services for people with mental health. Work's already been done, more money is going in terms of the NHS. But I'm going to be setting out tomorrow some more areas where we need to start the work. It's not a 5-minute job. We can't deal with these issues just overnight. It's not about one speech. It is about driving reform forward over a period of time and being honest with the public that this does take time to deal with.
Clearly something you're passionate about. How much new money are you putting into it?
There will be some money going into the mental health in the NHS. There's already an extra £1 billion going into mental health in the
Because
NHS.
just on that NHS, the £1 billion funding to the NHS for health, 90% of mental health trusts say it's not enough money. That's research by NHS providers last year.
Well, there is that £1 billion going in. There are some other sums of money that are being used within the NHS to deal with this mental health problem and to deal with aspects that sometimes people don't think about. Just if I can give you one example of something I've already done. When I was in the Home Office, one of the issues that concerned me was people in mental health crisis being taken to a police cell as a place of last resort. It wasn't good for them, it wasn't good for the police. Actually, we've changed that. We've seen the number for whom that happens coming down by 80%. This is, and that was a small sum of money that the NHS has been able to put in order to ensure that there's more, for example, more and different places of safety for people.
Just to press you on the ring-fenced new money for mental health, because otherwise there is a danger it will just be swallowed up by the crisis of the NHS, isn't it?
Well, but first of all, money is going into mental health, but it's always wrong for people to assume that the only answer to these issues is about funding. Yes, there are some issues there, and we have been looking at those and addressing those. But actually, if we look at the issue of mental health in this country, I think it's more about the stigma that still attaches to mental health. It's about how we all recognise 1 in 4 people, 1 in 4 of us, will suffer from some mental health.
You said 1 in 4 people. Okay. Amazing. 1 in 4 people has mental problem.
Issue through their lives. What we need to ensure is that the parity of esteem that we've established between physical health and mental health is actually carried forward, not just in the NHS, but in society at large as well, so that people recognise that they can also offer support and help to people with mental health and they don't shy away from it.
Okay. Keen now to talk about more global issues as well, because of course 2017 is a year where lots of sands are shifting across the world. How troubled are you by the fact that US intelligence agencies are claiming that President Putin of Russia has interfered with the presidential election?
Well, of course, the whole question of cyber attacks and state-sponsored cyber attacks is one that is not new, and this is something that we need to pay attention to and that we need to guard against. It's important that we take that whole issue of cybersecurity very seriously, and we have done here in the UK. One of the first things that David Cameron did in his government was actually put extra money into this whole question of cybersecurity.
And bearing in mind the apparent closeness of Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin, if Russia were to invade one of our NATO allies, say Estonia or Latvia, would the UK military be committed to defend that country?
Well, as you know, the Article 5 of NATO says that we do go for support of any NATO country that has military action against it.
Yes.
So, and just one of the important points I'd like to make, actually, because sometimes people think that there is going to be a change in American approach to NATO. From the conversations I've had, I think America remains fully committed to NATO, as we do. And we're already taking some steps to show the seriousness with which NATO...
Okay, this point is, she is completely different from Merkel's opinion. Merkel decided, okay, we don't need America anymore. NATO will going to be handled by European people, but she said different way. She is still sticking to getting along with Donald Trump, and she is supporting to Trump. Okay, it's different. I think you need to do something.
NATO. From the conversations I've had, I think America remains fully committed to NATO, as we do.
Different, right?
And we're already taking some steps to show the seriousness with which NATO considers its responsibilities. There will be UK troops on exercise in Estonia this year.
Staying on Donald Trump, I know that you're passionate about equality and helping other women. You've showed that as your record as Minister for Women and Equalities. Donald Trump tweeted last night that he was looking forward to meeting you next month. I'm just very interested to know your feelings before that meeting, bearing in mind...
Oh, she's talking about, what kind of, what to say, just is sex scandal? something like that. How do you say?
Some of the things that Donald Trump said about women. Now, I'll probably feel slightly awkward reading this out, but I do think it's important to rehear what Donald Trump has recorded saying in the past, which is about women. When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the pussy. I mean, forgetting the fact that you're Prime Minister for a moment, how does that make you feel as a woman?
Well, I think that's unacceptable. But in fact, Donald Trump himself has said that and has apologised for it. But the relationship that the UK has with the United States is about something much bigger than just the relationship between the two individuals as President and Prime Minister. That's important. But actually we have a long-standing special relationship with the United States. It's based on shared values. And it's a relationship where actually in the UK we feel we can say to the US if we think, if we disagree with something that they're doing. But it's because they've got that. Well, I've just said that it's unacceptable. But also he himself, I believe, has gone on to say.
So she is supporting Donald Trump 100% for sure. It's different from the other European countries. Macron and Merkel is different opinion.
It was unacceptable and he has apologised for it. But the special relationship that we have with the United States is an important relationship. It's an
very similar to Mr. Abe.
Important relationship in terms of security and stability around the world, but also obviously as we work together with the United States in counter-terrorism matters, for example, a very important special relationship.
Right. She said 100% for support Trump.
I've already had. I've had two very good, positive conversations with Donald Trump already. From the conversations I've had, I think we're going to look to build on that relationship for the benefit of both the US and the UK. And I think that's something that's optimistic and positive for the UK for the future.
So sometimes does pragmatism have to trump principle then?
No. What I'm talking about is a relationship that exists between the United Kingdom and the United States. Yes, if we think something's unacceptable, we say that. But actually, this is about more than one issue. It's about a long-standing relationship between them.
Right? Just same as Abe, maybe listen to her speech, that the same thing he said.
Yes, that has been an important bedrock for security and stability globally, and that we want to build on. We want to build on in economic terms. I think there's greater prosperity for both of us if we build on that relationship and strengthen it.
Prime Minister Theresa May, thank you very much for it.
Okay, this is Theresa May. Takashi, how do you think? You look tired. How do you think?
She's confirmed what she's talking is kind of reasonable in the short term, middle term, and long term. I don't know. So it might be reasonable for long term, but maybe what she's saying is making the British people fed up with what she's saying.
I think yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and what she wanted to, what she want to be, to continue to remain. It might be reasonable for UK than just leaving EU and not allowed to deal with the single market, and also just getting away from the US.
Actually, what she is talking about, she looks like she don't want to leave EU, right? She's just talking, even she say, even leaving EU, and of course in immigration, she just control immigration, but she tried to have still relationship with European Union, she said, and single market, so forth. But what she's talking about, except immigration, she tried to exact the same treatment or trading among European countries, right? How do you think?
Yeah, yeah, it's difficult to convince the people, but I don't know what she was saying in during the referendum for Brexit. So what was her message and her policy that she was saying in the referendum?
Yeah, this is just Lee is the decision is mainly focused on immigration, right? But so he's talking about, okay, we're going to control immigration. But she said the other remaining issue like trading or like any other, things we're going to try to keep as the same as before. But she said, right, this is impossible. And Merkel said, and the other EU Parliament member said, no, we don't allow the same thing. But she had confidence it's a good relationship with European countries. So she has what she's talking, good faith for the British people, British people. But if turn around, EU people, he tried to negotiate what she said. It's impossible. So I don't know what her intention is. Maybe, I don't know her intention. Maybe if she has confidence she can persuade European people, just like what she said. It's ridiculous. Leave is leave. European people, they cut new tariff, new tax, and because, or if you're going to join the one market in EU market, British need to pay a lot of money as a fine leaving the EU, but she will not pay that money. Sort of things, just she is good faith to British people, and okay, she's going to take care of those things, but except immigration. But it's ridiculous. But my concern.
But actually, she's saying she's confident, and what it be if she really that could do it. I mean, it could do something that she wants to do. She wants to remain. She wants to continue with US and EU.
Okay, probably why she has confidence. The reason is German and UK has a big trade relationship. They have a strong supply chain tied in, so they couldn't cut it out. Okay, if you're going to UK charge to the tariff or German charge to tariff, those global manufacturing company cannot sustain manufacturing. So she has confidence. So they carried out those issues. So sort of things she just in her mind. But this is even if that Merkel never allowed those things, just maybe cut it out.
Yeah, so it's gonna actually like cherry picking. As
that's right.
Merkel mentioned.
That's right. And I think, okay, this is it. We need to go to lunch. But this message is okay. I think I want to ask you to study. Her English is very good. Her English. Do you remember the person for the Oxford graduated person, or old person? Last time he came here? Wednesday night. What's the name of that? She dead on Golden Week of May. He dead. He committed to teach me British English. He told me he knows any word of economist, but dead is dead. He's younger than me, but unfortunately we missed British speaking person. But her English is very good. Right? British is okay. We're going to lunch, so unfortunately I'm going to show you the Colvin. Colvin, the next video is also very good. Okay.